Bill Allen was last before this club, I think, in 2009. At that particular time, he was a 309 trustee assigned to the Ouachita County Jail by the Arkansas Department of Corrections. He was housed out at the jail, which was, of course, then right across the street from the courthouse, and he's known to many of the courthouse people here today and developed a good friendship with all of them. It was during his time here that he and I became friends, and I realized that he was seriously trying to give something back to the community in a big way. In 1986, Bill was 30 years old, and he caught a 50-year sentence to the Arkansas Department of Corrections on the charge of aggravated robbery, and he'll tell that story to you here in a minute. Bill served 27 years in the Department of Corrections. In January 1991, he realized something had to change. And this is when he first started in the Braille program. He was converting print to Braille for the School of the Blind, School for the Blind. It was also during this time that he started writing. He wrote, I think, first a children's story, and then wrote the book that he is going to tell you about, which is his life, entitled Speed Trap. He is here with his wife, Debbie, to whom we sang happy birthday a little bit ago. He was released from the Department of Corrections in January 2012, having served the 27 years. He is now an administrator of a halfway house in Little Rock. Bill has a very compelling story to tell you and a very good book, which I recommend to your read. And without further ado, I'll give you Bill Allen.
Thank you, Judge. Thank everybody for coming. It's kind of a hard act to follow, that high lick maneuver, but I'll give it a go. I didn't start out robbing drugstores. I didn't even start out breaking into drugstores. I just wanted to get high. You know, that's how it starts. You just want to get high. You're not thinking about hurting people. You're not thinking about stealing things. Of course, I had to start stealing things. I had to start stealing money from my mother's purse, things out of my neighbor's garages. I mean, I wanted to get high. And one thing led to another. And the cost of my drugs started getting so astronomical that even my stealing couldn't support it. And so I started looking at drugstores. And I thought, well, I bet they have a lot of dope in there. I just wanted to get high. And so I started breaking into drugstores when I was 15 years old. I broke into my neighborhood drugstore right down the road from my house. And then it got to a point where the pharmacists were getting wise to us back in the early 70s, and they started hiding the drugs, and you couldn't find the drugs, or they were in big safes, and couldn't get them out of the safes and stuff. And so I said, well, I know how to do this. And I went and got me a .45 automatic. I mean, I wanted to get high. But like I said, people that get involved in drugs, they don't have any idea that it's going to take a hold of them and drag them down into the gutter until they are treating the people that they love most in the world like trash. They're burning bridges left and right. And most of the people that I encounter in my job have burned all their bridges. They have no more family or friends that want to have anything to do with them. I've written a book. It's called Speed Trap. Subtitle is 80 Robberies in 50 Years. My only claim to fame is being stupid enough to have to spend 27 years of my life in prison. And I did that for a Faulkner County, Conway, Arkansas drugstore robbery. One drugstore robbery. Back in 1979, Debbie and I met through a friend of mine. And in 1980, she didn't have any idea what she was getting involved with. In 1980, I went and robbed a drugstore. And two of my friends got caught and started being questioned by the police. And they ended up giving me up. And so I told Debbie, we were just living together. We hadn't been together very long. And I told her that the police were going to be looking for me and asked her if she wanted to go or if she wanted to stay. And she said, well, I want to stay. And that, that's what I expected. I mean, we hadn't been together too long. She's not going to take off with an outlaw running across the country and stuff. So the day the police did start looking for me, I took Debbie her car. I had her car, a 78 Z28, and I took it to her at work and was trying to get her to take me out on Interstate 40 and drop me off, just head west a little ways, get me out of town and drop me off on the freeway, and I was going to take off because the law was looking for me. And Debbie said, well, I told you, I'm going with you. And I said, I asked you if you wanted to go or you wanted to stay. She said, yeah, I want to stay with you. I said, okay. We took off and we went to San Diego, and we're burning up her Visa card that's got a $500 limit. We don't have a dime in our pockets. We go from San Diego to Miami, from Miami back to San Diego, from San Diego to San Francisco. And finally, the FBI interrupted our little vacation, and we were arrested in San Francisco and extradited back. I spent 7 months in jail. Debbie never missed a visit, brought me money. She was there for me. I didn't have any idea until that period of time just how astounding a woman I am. I went to jury trial, and I was acquitted. I walked out scot-free. They were trying to give me a life sentence, and I felt bulletproof. Debbie and I were married the next day, and it was one of my few attempts, but really heartfelt, trying attempts to try to stay clean, get off of the drugs. I knew I'd found me an amazing woman. I had a job working for a boat company. I'd worked my way up to production manager at a boat manufacturing place. And all it took was a friend of mine coming by and showing me a package of speed for me to fall off the wagon. And my robbery started back up again, and they continued. Debbie and I ended up moving down to Dallas, Texas. I had a couple of stints in prison for parole violations. 6, 7 months, 10 months. Didn't impact me much. I mean, I beat them in a jury trial. They're trying to give me life. I really felt like I was bulletproof. So I'm running around the country robbing drugstores. I've robbed drugstores in every state that borders Arkansas. And I terrorized Little Rock and North Little Rock. In 1984, I robbed a pharmacy in Conway, Arkansas. I had a pain, a kind of feeling in my gut that told me not to go to Conway. I went anyway, and I robbed a drugstore there, and the law started looking for me, and I was finally arrested down in Dallas, Texas, where Debbie and I were living. I spent 14 months in the Dallas County Jail fighting extradition to Tennessee because Tennessee wanted a piece of me too. I was extradited to Tennessee, and I spent 7 months in jail in a dungeon in Jackson County, Tennessee, or Madison County in Jackson, Tennessee. I went to trial. They were offering me 40 years to plead guilty. I said, I want to go to trial. Went to trial, and I was acquitted again. I really felt bulletproof now. I've got one more hurdle I've got to go over, and that's that charge in Faulkner County. I've got to go to Arkansas and face that charge. So I waive extradition. I mean, I've already beat them in 2 trials. I'm gonna make the third time charm. I'm gonna make it work again. So I go to Conway, and they're offering me life to plead guilty. They wanted me bad. I said, no, I'll take it to trial. I took it to trial, and I wasn't acquitted. They gave me 50 years without parole, sent me to prison. I arrived at the Cummins unit, and I had a bunch of friends down there. I had plenty of friends. I was immediately put in with the drug crew, the bootleg crew, the bookies, everything that you can do illegal in prison. I was involved in it. I stayed class 4, which is the lowest class status that you can have in prison, for years. The hole was just another place to live. It was just another barracks for me to live in. They telling me, "You're going to the hole, Alan." I don't care. I got friends back there too. I went along with that type of life really thinking that I was going to die in prison. I had accepted that fact. 50 years without parole. I mean, we're talking back 1986. We're looking at Buck Rogers era. I'm not going to live that long. I'm certainly not going to survive in this type of environment for that long. In 1991, I had met a girl. Debbie and I, let me back up for just a second. I made Debbie divorce me when I got a 50-year sentence. I made her divorce me. And Debbie and I cut contact in 1986. And I never tried to re-enter her life in any kind of fashion. I felt like I'd messed up her life bad enough. In prison, I wrote a letter, ran an ad, and got a letter from a girl that wanted to come and visit me. Said she wasn't interested in any type of emotional attachments or anything, but she'd come and see me. I married her the next year. And from her coming to see me and having that contact with the outside world, which is the only contact I had, my family had nothing to do with me, I started thinking that maybe, just maybe, I might be able to survive the sentence. I might be able to come out of this thing alive. And I decided that I was going to get off drugs, and I was going to turn my life around, and I was going to change everything. I was just going to do it completely, a 360. And I was successful. It was a very, very hard, difficult road to go down, especially during that time in the Arkansas Department of Corrections. They had no programs. They had no counselors. They had nothing at that time to get involved in. Fortunately, I got transferred from the Cummins unit to the Wrightsville unit and got involved in a program called the Braille Project. I became certified through the Library of Congress to transcribe textbooks for blind children at the Arkansas School for the Blind and throughout the state of Arkansas. And it became very important to me because that was when I learned something about giving. That if you give and you're not looking for rewards, you're just trying to help somebody do better, that the rewards start flowing your way. I learned considerable computer skills, clerking skills, and so forth in the Braille Project, and I ran that program for 5 years and turned it into one of the best Brailling institutions in the country. It was nationally recognized. When I left Wrightsville, I'm looking for 1B, trustee status. That's my next goal, is to achieve trustee status so that I could start getting furloughs and hopefully get out and repair the damage I'd done with my family and maybe enhance my chances at clemency. I went to the Tucker unit after visiting several different units and being told not only no, but hell no, we are not giving you 1B. If we give you 1B trustee status, Alan, we're going to have to go shut down the airports because you're going to be on a plane going somewhere. You're not going to stick around. It took me a long time. I did not get 1B until 2001 at the Tucker unit. And then I became a trustee. And I worked for outside maintenance. I was a clerk at outside maintenance. And it was like running a small city, trying to keep all the parts and everything going for a small city. So it was a very responsible job and stuff. And I met some good people at that unit. And a year later, when I put in for a furlough, I didn't think they were going to give me a furlough. I went in and the warden told me, "Have a good time, Alan." And I'd repaired the damage enough with my family, with my mother particularly, that my parents were going to allow me to come home. And they had retired and moved up to Mountain View. And so they let me come home. And this was my first time being out in the free world in 18 years. and things physically assaulted me. I walked into Walmart, and I was physically assaulted by the colors that I saw. I wasn't used to seeing all the reds and yellows and purples and pinks, and it was like I was in a giant kaleidoscope. And my mom looked at me and said, "Son, are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be all right." So it was quite an experience for me, that first furlough, and I wanted much, much more. And so I kept working hard. I stayed sober. I stayed drug-free, and several furloughs followed after that. And then I applied for the 309 program. And I was very fortunate in where I landed, because I landed right here in Washita County. And the people of this county really helped smooth the edges off this very rough old convict. Because believe me, I was rough. I did not know how to behave socially. I didn't know how to talk to people. I didn't know anything. So no social skills whatsoever. And I came in when Paul Lucas was the sheriff, and I stayed on when David Norwood was the sheriff, and I spent 5 years here. And they were 5 remarkable years, because I've developed many good friendships in this town. In 2010, I had to go back into prison for the last 2 years. I thought I was going to work release, but found out I wasn't eligible, and they put me back in prison. I hadn't done anything wrong, but I did my last 2 years at Tucker Unit. And ironically, I got extradited to Arkansas on Friday the 13th. I'd always been scared of Friday the 13th since then. And ironically, I was released from prison on Friday the 13th of January 2012. And I walked out a free man. One of the most amazing aspects of my entire story is this lady right here. While I was here on 309 in 2009, I'd signed a book deal to have my book published. And Debbie plays a very prominent role in about the first 3/4 of this book. And so I felt like I owed Debbie a heads up, and did some searching and found our divorce records in Dallas, Texas, found where she'd been remarried, found out what her new last name was, what her husband's name was, and I started doing some more searching. And I found her in Austin, Texas, so I sat down and wrote her a letter. And I told her in this letter, I'm not trying to get back in your life. This book's coming out, you're in it, I just wanted to give you a heads up. If you do want to contact me, this is how you do it. And so I mailed that letter off on Christmas of 2009. January 2010 rolls around. I don't hear anything from Debbie. I'm thinking, okay, that's all right. I did what I was supposed to do. I gave her a heads up. On January the 25th of 2010, I'm sitting there with a laptop computer in my lap that David Norwood let me use, and I get an email that says, "Bill, I don't know if you want to talk with me or not, but this is Debbie." I shot her back an email and I said, "Used to be Debbie Allen?" She said, "Yes." I said, "What's your phone number?" And I went and called her. And one of the first things that she told me in that phone conversation was, "Bill, I never stopped loving you." Yeah, it got me. I asked her about the letter that I wrote her. She said, "What letter?" I asked her what her last name was. It was different than the last name that I wrote this letter to. She lived in North Little Rock, not in Austin, Texas. She never got my letter. But starting from Christmas of 2009, when I was sitting down writing her a letter, she pulled my picture up on the ADC website and wished me Merry Christmas. A week later on my birthday, New Year's Day, she pulled it up again and wished me a happy birthday. Could not get me off her mind, and finally contacted my sister and wanted to know how to get in touch with me. And so 25 years, neither one of us had reached out to the other. And then within just days, there we were. And so she came and saw me, and I spent my next furlough with her, and we've never looked back. We just celebrated our first anniversary on April the 7th. We were married April the 7th, immediately after I got out. So you pretty much know the ending of my story. My story's a fairy tale. It really is. And this is the fairy in my tale. You take her out of it, it's just another tale. I work for a place called Hidden Creek. We're a transitional house, and we deal mainly with the DCC, the Department of Community Corrections, as opposed to the ADC, which is units like Tucker and Cummins and Wrightsville and so forth. And what we try to do is we try to bring people in. We're a faith-based organization, and we try to bring people in and help them become sober, productive citizens. Drugs are rampant through this area. I bet everybody in here knows somebody that has been hurt by drug abuse. Methamphetamine is terrible. Methamphetamine is made by backyard cooks, whereas the methamphetamine that I used to take and what I used to rob drugstores for was made in pharmacies and made in laboratories. Speed traps, there's not any magical answers in there. There's not anything in there that's going to tell you just how to get off the drugs, just ABC steps that you have to take. What it is a book of hope. And I tell everybody that I talk to, every resident, every group, that I hold myself up as an example of the power of God and what can happen in your life if you're really trying to do the right things. Because I'm nobody special. And I've made it. And I've been clean since 1991. And I've accomplished what I've accomplished. And I'm nobody special. And anybody else can do the exact same thing. So it's a book of hope. I'd like to thank you.